Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. We caught up today with Fortune Majapelli, who's the CEO of Bushveld Minerals, listed here on AIM. If you want our thoughts and opinions on the conversation and his plans for the future, and indeed the company itself, you can find that at cruxinvestor.com/club. Where you can also find detailed company reports. There are market commentaries from experts from around the world on a variety of commodities and companies. There are training videos. There's also summaries of other interviews that we have done just to save you a bit of time. And there, of course, there's our thriving community of investors sharing their thoughts and ideas with each other. So go along and join them at cruxinvestor.com/club. And we'd love your feedback too. So do give us a like, leave your comments below. And if you want to see what we talked about, take a look in the description. Fortune, how you doing, sir?
Very well, Matt. Thanks for having me again.
Good to see you. I haven't seen you since July. You've been quite busy. There's lots of announcements, lots of numbers. Excited to see those. How are you keeping though?
It has been busy, as always. We continue on our path of executing our strategy of the vertically integrated vanadium platform, which is in terms of which is split into the two parts, as you recall, mining and processing on the one hand, and the energy storage story on the other hand. With our mining and processing, the objective and the focus very much still being on growing that production platform, continuing to improve our cost position as we increase the throughput through the plant. And making sure that we are on track with our plans to produce 8,400 tons of vanadium over the next 3 to 5 years, which will make us a significant vanadium player with about 8% of the global market. Look, we just closed the financing, as you'll be aware, with Orion for $65 million. Which is going to support that effort to grow our vanadium production. And, we remain very much committed to that path, notwithstanding the recent performance of the vanadium price, which we think is not sustainable in the medium to long term. So work has continued, therefore, in respect of making sure we're ready to scale up at Vametco, refurbishment plans at Vanchem, and as I said earlier on, as far as energy is concerned, you'll have noticed that there's quite a number of announcements we've put out, showing the kind of progress that we're making in establishing VRFBs as a real, viable, long-term, long-duration energy storage solution.
Okay, thanks. What a frustrating year for you, don't you feel?
Yeah, I would say it is frustrating. I think we can be honest about that. Firstly, you've got the COVID disruptions. Then you have a vanadium price, which is, in our view, been much lower than it needs to be, given the fundamentals of the vanadium market as we see it. And then, of course, we've got a share price that's strongly correlated with the vanadium price, and that itself has also been very low. I think it presents a fantastic buying opportunity for investors who dare to look a little bit more into the medium long term. But no question that that is quite frustrating, and it has an impact on, for example, your funding choices and options as you look to grow our business. And it's quite clear that we indicated that our growth plan is one that requires us to access capital markets and among other sources of funding, of course. We have, I think, shown with the financing from Orion that our story is still inherently very, very strong, robust, and attractive. And so thankfully, we're able to still fund our growth agenda.
Okay, but talk to me about what's going on in the minds of the board and the management team, because if I look at your story, and we've spoken a few times, and people can look at the links below in the description to kind of hear the business plan, etc. You've always been very clear about what you want to do. You've got a very solid management team, operating team, and you are shaving costs. You are looking at how you run the operation, but the price isn't there. So you're not getting credit for what you're doing, okay, on the one hand. On the other hand, you are looking to the future and pointing towards, VRFB and battery storage, which is a huge thematic of the time, but it's fairly nascent, so you're not getting credit for that. You're sitting in between sort of two worlds at the moment. So where do you focus your time and efforts?
Look, I think when you go through what we are seeing in the market, I often say that it forces you to really look at your assumptions, your investment thesis. And for us specifically, we have to go back and check whether our belief, our thesis that the vanadium market is one that is characterized in the medium to long term by a structural deficit. And not only that, we believe that with demand growing, that the parties best placed to answer that question and that deficit are primary producers. And that if you're going to do primary production, you're going to need to have high quality grade and scale of resources, which you will in reality only find, in terms of that combination of scale and grade in South Africa. So that thesis, in our view, still holds. But I would say that when you go through, the kind of market we are in right now, you have to go back and check again and make sure that that still holds. Then secondly, you have to obviously convince someone else, right? In this instance, the market, that the story still holds. So I think that, that process for me is actually quite enriching and quite useful. It forces you, to deal with things like making sure that your cost base is lean. It brings into sharp focus the whole point that we have mentioned before around energy storage being a natural hedge against vanadium price volatility. And indeed, today we are seeing an increasing number of vanadium redox flow battery deployments around the world. We invested last year $5 million into Avalon and Redti, in the process facilitating the merger of those two companies into what is now Invinity Energy Systems, a company that has shown tremendous growth and has put out some fairly positive, good announcements around orders that they are winning. Their market cap today, it's 145 million pounds. Our investment has done very well, but more importantly, is it illustrates the point we talk about in terms of the price hedge that energy storage is. So I think that in the crisis there is a gift, which is essentially us, revalidating our investment thesis, revalidating our strategy, pushing hard towards being a lean, from a cost perspective, operation. And the one final point I would mention also is that at this kind of prices, you can be sure you're not going to see a lot of opportunistic vanadium projects out there, which means that as far as future vanadium production goes, ultimately you're going to need to look, in our view, at companies like Bushveld Minerals.
That's a good point. Let's talk about Orion Finance. You've got two things going on there. You've got a production finance agreement, and you've also put a convert in place. You wouldn't have to do that if the price of vanadium was, where you want it to be, obviously. So I imagine that wasn't a light decision to make. So why that number, and what are you going to do with it?
When you say number, you're talking the $65 million. Look, I think we've made clear to the market what our growth capital spend looks like. We're talking spending in the order of $25 million at Vametco to scale up production there to 4,200 tons per annum of vanadium. We have a capital spend program at Vanchem, which we estimated about $45 million to raise production up to about 4,200 tons per annum as well. Obviously, all of this over a 3 to 5 year horizon. We don't need to necessarily fund all of it up front. But when markets are the way they are, do you sit back then and say, we can't do this? Or that's actually the time, as I said earlier on, when you've rechecked your investment thesis, when you've rechecked that your business case holds up, is it not the time that perhaps you should actually have the courage of your convictions to make sure that when the upturn comes, you are ready. We are of that latter viewpoint as a company, and which is why we went the way we did to raise the kind of money that we raised at $65 million.
I remember some Asian clients of mine telling me that 20 years ago, the time to strike is when markets are down because your competitors won't be able to compete when the good times come. So I do understand that, but what kind of Western approach is maybe we need to hunker down. Was that ever a consideration?
I can tell you that yes, it is, it's not like we don't do that. You still do that. So when I talk about using the opportunity to really be rigorous in how you look at your costs and try to make sure that you make your operations even more lean, that's part of the hunkering down, part of the response. And at the same time, you don't rush to put another 4,000 tons into the market, in one go. I think we've always been clear that the path to 8,400 is a gradual ramp-up profile over a 3 to 5 year period. And we're going to do that, obviously, with one eye on how the market is responding and how the market is evolving, hopefully in the direction that we believe it will do in time. So we will follow, and we continue to follow, a fairly prudent and, in my view, a pragmatic approach to our investments in the space.
Okay, so you said you were able to raise this money because people believed in your story. How much has that money cost you, though?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that if you're going to raise money like the PFA that we raised, it's debt financing, and you could argue that it's more expensive than term loan, of a shorter duration. However, consider that this facility is longer term dated, over a much longer period of time. Number one, and number two, it comes with a ranking in terms of security that is behind senior term debt that we may raise in the future. So, no, it's we're comfortable that it is an entirely affordable financing. And when it comes to the convertible bond, the option there was, what do you go raise equity capital, when your share price is 12? Or do you wait for your share price to improve, or do you secure the funding on a convertible basis with a conversion price like we did of 17p, which we think under the circumstances is a good deal for both parties?
Okay, interesting. So let's talk about the application here, because with Vametco and Vanchem, they were they needed a bit of love and attention. So what's happening at each one of those in terms of specific spends, whether it be over 1 to 5 year period? What are your immediate concerns with both of them, actually?
Yeah. So at Vametco, we are quite keen to make sure that we have an operation that can produce at circa 3,000 plus tons of production in a fairly reliable manner. We want to invest further to scale up that plant to 4,200 tons, as we've told the market before. That investment program is going to be of a debottlenecking approach. In other words, you've got a fairly well. It's a fairly complicated processing plant, right? It's not just mine. You crush, you mill, you do concentration, you put it in a kiln for roasting, and then after that you've got a leaching circuit, and then you've got a precipitation all the way up till you get to the final product. And the what limits the amount of vanadium we can produce oftentimes is bottlenecks along that plant. And so our phase 3 work is really focused on unlocking those bottlenecks. And so that's why we expect that as we do that, we will see a gradual ramp up of production over that period of 3 to 5 years as we make those investments. As far as Vanchem is concerned, we're operating with a single kiln at the moment, and the plan was always that you don't buy Vanchem at the price we bought it to continue operating it as a single kiln. In any event, the fixed cost element will end up making a costly operation. What you do want to do is get a lot more throughput through that plant. And that will involve, among other things, bringing the other kilns online, refurbishing other parts, like bringing in an AMV plant with Vanchem, et cetera, et cetera. So and we're going to do it in steps. Obviously, we're not going to bring the other two kilns in one go. We'll focus on bringing second kiln and then eventually a third kiln. In between all of that, there's some critical capital spending, which is needed for license to operate, like the expansion of our calcine facility, which we currently are busy with. I'm very happy, I must say, that Vanchem, since we acquired it, has continued to, just move along, producing consistently, meeting the kind of volume targets that we set on it. So it has been a pleasant experience, I must say, since we acquired it, and certainly look forward as we spend money there to expand production to see if Vanchem contribute even more to the group.
Okay, so I just want to be clear, because we've had lots of questions sent in. The time frame is a factor of price in the market today. So you're not in a rush per se to do this, but there's a process you've laid out as a consequence of that, which you're happy with in terms of debottlenecking, et cetera, and working out processes. So the next question, it was also sent in actually by several people, was what's happening with the mini grid at Vametco?
Yes. So the point of the mini grid was, we always sort of, I think, described it as such, that we want to demonstrate the viability, the business case of solar plus vanadium battery storage applications for operations like ours. And we think there's a big market in that space, particularly with operations that are concerned about, one, the security of supply of power, which is in South Africa, but also who are concerned about the security of the cost of that power. In South Africa, we've seen here in India, our utility make arguments for above inflation tariff increases. I personally believe that those applications are unnecessary from a utility point of view, which is trying to ensure that it is still financially viable. But at the same time, what it does do is it just makes propositions like the mini grid that much more attractive. We can deploy these systems at a tariff that is quite competitive with even the utility. And I think that's a very attractive point. So we're very happy with the progress in respect to that. We have appointed an EPC for that. And the project is well underway. We expect it to get funded. The equity funding is coming from a partnership between Bushveld and Tebe, which is a South African BE investment company, which is quite a good track record in the investment space in South Africa, and we're looking to bring in some debt financing into it. So it's let me just say the project is well on course, and we are certainly looking forward to the day when we will start to draw our power from it.
Okay, so and I guess we're kind of slipping into the Bushveld Energy component of this conversation. But I would like to come back to the mining and processing bit later, if I may. You've had some problems with UET Eskom in terms of deliveries. Because you started a process last year, it's slowed down. So what's happened?
Well, the system actually, again, when we started the whole project, and it was because Eskom has a facility where they were testing different battery technologies, and we were quite keen that VRFBs are part of the technologies that they're testing. So we partnered with UET to get a system installed. The system completed site acceptance in May, testing in May 2019. However, what did happen is that there was a shift in strategy within our partner UET, which moved to a new, more modular VRFB product, which they were no longer able to continue monitoring and servicing. And so as a result, that system was shut down in October of 2019, and an agreement reached between Bushveld, the IDC, our partner UET, and Ronke Power, the Chinese parent company of UET, to bring in a new system, which is manufactured and maintained by Ronke Power. It's of a similar power and energy capability. And that system has been delivered. It was delivered in Q1 of 2020, but unfortunately, because of the COVID lockdowns, that has delayed the commissioning of that system. So in short, the project is still very much on track. I'm particularly pleased, by the way, to get RKP's involvement in terms of the manufacturing and the maintenance of this system. You'll recall, of course, that RKP is the company that is deploying that 800 megawatt hour VRFB battery in Dalian in China.
Yeah, okay. Have you lost money then on the first phase of this project because they've changed strategy, or have you been recompensed?
I wouldn't say lost money per se, because the project, remember, is not a revenue generating project, right? It was always going to be a cost to us for a greater objective. So as it cost us, yes, it has, but there is also a settlement agreement we're comfortable of reaching with UET in terms of managing the cost associated with that earlier system.
Okay, fine. Sounds like a fair deal. Can we come back to Invinity, please? Because I'd love to understand the whole electrolyte rental component, because that seems to be, like I say, it's a big investment of yours. They're doing quite well, but what's the reality of timing around that? Firstly, are people buying into the technology, the timing, the costs, etc.? So how are you looking at that investment?
The electrolyte rental, we see it as a catalyst for vanadium redox flow deployment. Vanadium makes up a significant chunk of the upfront cost of a vanadium redox flow battery system, between 30 and 45%, depending on the vanadium price. Given that these batteries are long life, 20 plus years, if you can convert some of that capex into OPEX through a rental model, you definitely want to do that. It enhances the economics of these systems. We outlined a strategy to deploy these rental models starting in 2018 when we did a small rental in the US. And that was a very small project we did off balance sheet. And then the second part of our strategy has been to target bigger deployments or rental contracts, similar to the one that we have now done with EDF Renewables Spivo Power in partnership with Invinity. It's a 5 megawatt hour battery, which means that in terms of the amount of vanadium that goes into there, it's just over 20 tons. In fact, it's just over 25 tons of vanadium contained. So it's a good volume of vanadium, a good size contract. Gives us the opportunity to also construct bankable rental contracts, which we can obviously then take on to other projects as well. The partnership with Invinity, we certainly have a lot of good hopes in terms of writing more rental contracts of that nature. I should add that the deployment of the mini grid at Vametco is also going to have an electrolyte rental contract built into it. So we're very encouraged to see the level of interest, and we expect to grow that book significantly. Third point I will highlight about that, Matt, is that in time, we obviously would like to create a platform, that is at scale, that has got good cost financing, yield-seeking financing into that, to support, the deployments of these rental contracts at a much, much larger scale. The rental contract is not only great for VRFB deployments, it's got an incredible sustainability proposition as well for a mining company like Bushveld Minerals. And if you will just indulge me, let me explain why I think we're particularly excited about that. At the end of the vanadium flow battery's 20 plus year life, we have always said, because of the non-degradation, you can take that electrolyte, you can put it in another battery, even if you might have to repurpose it a little bit. But you can also take that electrolyte back to our facilities, our processing facilities, and convert it into nitrovan, vanadium pentoxide, or other vanadium products that you then sell to to steel makers, for example, to put into rebar, which will go into infrastructure for decades more years, right? We talk about the contribution of vanadium to the circular economy. That's what we're talking about. But what we haven't explained enough in the past is that if you look at a company like Vametco, when we produce 1 ton of vanadium, we would have mined about 450 tons of ore. And of the 450 tons of ore, we will crush it, we will concentrate it, and we'll take the non-magnetic fraction and put it on a tailings facility. You're talking about 300 tons of this material. Then you're left with about 150 tons of concentrate. That goes through our processing plant, and you're going to take out about 148 tons of calcine waste material that you're going to put in a lined facility. Ultimately, you end up with about a ton of V. If your cost, for illustration purposes, was $25 to make that 1 kilogram of vanadium, or $25,000 to make that ton of vanadium, if you give me the option at that point to say, would you rather take that electrolyte, convert it into ferrovanadium at a cost of, let's make up a number, $5, right? I could buy that electrolyte back at $20 and make Nitrovan, and from a cost of production point of view, be at parity. With the added advantage, however, that I haven't dug up more tons from the ground, and I haven't processed material through a kiln with emissions attaching to it, et cetera, et cetera. So the carbon footprint is even better. So I think in the long term, the more rental contracts we do, the better position the company like Vametco or Vanchem will be to even be much more sustainable in the way they produce vanadium. It's the whole concept of using your commodities, your metals, over and over again, as opposed to mining it, selling it for single use, and then mining more from the ground again.
No,
that for me is sustainability at its best.
And it's sustainability, and it's an annuity stream on an asset with sunk costs up front. I do get that, and I wonder if other commodities will follow suit. Okay, but here's the thing about this area, which is young and exciting, but therein lies the problem. It's young, the market isn't there yet. How much time is it going to take for the market to get to a scale where companies like you can take advantage of it?
I would challenge that.
We need scale.
I would challenge that. The market is there. Ronka Power is deploying 800 megawatt hours in China. It's vanadium flow batteries. Mm-hmm. Sumitomo has been awarded another 51 megawatt hours of a vanadium redox flow battery in Japan. In South Africa, our own utility, Eskom, is on a procurement program for 1,400 megawatt hours in battery storage. Now, granted, it's not just going to be vanadium flow batteries are not guaranteed. It will be multiple technologies, but we hope that VRFBs can capture a certain share of that, particularly given their local content proposition, which is quite attractive. I mean, I can go on and tell you about it. I mean, if you look at the idea of self-generation that the government is pushing, companies to be able to do, that is going to open up also a substantial market opportunity. So I agree that the future is still ahead. I mean, the scale is still ahead, but the momentum is certainly, I think, building up quite significantly.
Okay, we can definitely have a debate about this because the government talking about ideas and then being realities are two different things. And what I'm asking you is, when does the scale arrive? When is the uptake arrive? When do the price discovery arrive? Because if I look at vanadium price, it's not there. There's the first signal I'm looking at as an investor, right? Because I don't know technically what it's going to take you, the cost of what it's going to take you to start supplying electrolytes into the market, even when it does arrive. Do you know what I mean? Let me
challenge you on this one. It's not ideas, right? I think I give you examples.
I just used your word.
Concrete examples.
I just used your word.
These are just concrete deployments out there. Invinity announced just the other day another 8 megawatt our award in Australia. The procurement program I talked about, which is funded by the World Bank, by Eskom, is currently underway as we talk. It's 1,400. There is a tender out for what is called the Risk Mitigation IPPP in South Africa to procure 2,000 megawatts of dispatchable power, which is expected is going to include some storage, right? These are programs that are currently underway. We expect window 5 of the renewable energy IPPs in South Africa to open soon. That is also going to be in the order of thousands of megawatts of renewable with scope for storage to be part of it. What I'm trying to say to you is that the market opportunity is now there. It is going to grow, right? Bloomberg estimates this market to grow something like 122-fold between 2018 and 2040. So yes, there's still a lot of growth ahead. Does the market get it yet? Not yet. I think, although that's debatable when you look at the, an Invinity with a market cap that's now equal to Bushveld's market cap, right? I think that the reason you see an Invinity perform like that, in addition to it being a solid company with a good management, good product, and a good, future, is also the fact that it is viewed clearly as an energy company, right? As a clean energy proposition. So investors, who are looking for that exposure, this offers them that. And when it's researched in terms of its proposition within the energy space. I think that for us as Bushveld Minerals, it's still a bit of a challenge because we're seen as a mining company, as a processing company. So the energy proposition within our story does not yet get the recognition that we believe it deserves. But that's not going to be like that forever. We believe it's going to change, and in part because of some of the things that we are doing to address that.
Okay, not debating that. I think you're a very smart team, very agile team. I get that, and you're not getting the credit because the price isn't in the marketplace. The bit I'm asking you about is how long do we have to wait? Because even Invinity, their technology may not be where we end up. So I assume they're going to have to be agile too, and they're going to have to work out what technologies their customers want. And you've seen it. You've talked about moving with Eskom from one technology to a more modular, solution. So it's nascent. It's evolving. It's not to say it's not happening. I'm just asking the question of when and what's the scale, and more importantly, how do you, the smart guy in the room, take advantage of it?
I agree with you. I think when you talk particularly about Bushveld Minerals and you say, look at what's going on with Invinity, look at what's going on with energy plays in general. You have taken a fairly clear, explicit interest in this space and have done some very interesting things, but it is not reflecting yet. When is that going to start reflecting? I think it's a very valid question. And it's a question that we as a management team and as the board, we are very actively engaged in. What exactly we're going to do to address that, I can't say right now. Suffice to say that it is certainly something that we are actively engaged in to try and solve, to ensure, again, that our energy story gets the recognition that we believe it deserves and it is lacking. And I'll give you just some of the considerations here. If you look at Bushveld Minerals, in terms of sector, location on the LSE, it's a mining company. It's viewed as a mining company. Never mind that we don't only mine. We process, we beneficiate to final product, but we don't feature within the clean tech space. We don't feature within the energy sector space. And so how do we ensure that investors who are active in that sector, who are looking for exposure in that sector, can look at Bushveld as giving them that option, right? Obviously, to do that means they have to take a view not only of energy, they have to also take a view on the mining and the processing. That's just an example of just one of the considerations we have to think about as we try to solve for this. What I'm very confident in is that there is a solution to it. And we will inform the market in due course. I can't say a lot more at this stage, unfortunately.
No, the fact you're even talking or thinking about it is interesting to me. We've seen other companies move from mining into trying to classify themselves as industrial chemicals. Smart. We've seen a lot.
And I would add, right, the other thing, if you look at our research on Bushveld, for the most part, the coverage is from mining analysts, right? If you go find an energy sector analyst to take a look at Bushveld and to write on Bushveld, you might find that they may struggle to write a lot about our mining and our processing, but they'll have a lot to say about Bushveld energy, right? So again, it's about making sure that there is, when you talked about price discovery, I think there is investment proposition discovery, right? Making sure that the entire investment proposition is very clear to the investor community and to the appropriate investor sectors, and that we create structurally opportunities for the investors to participate in the story. Again, I can't say a lot more than that, but I think you can appreciate that there is certainly a lot of thought that we're putting into this question.
For sure. Like I said, we've spoken to a number of companies who are trying to insert themselves into this green circular economy. Europe, obviously, a big part of that solution. A lot of money being provided by the EU and countries up there too. So I'm interested to see how you develop this. If indeed you do choose to move away from the label of vanadium miner, into further downstream, it could be meaningful. But look, Fortune, as ever, fantastic to speak to you. Thank you very much for all of your insight and sharing that with us. It's a great story. Pick up the phone when there's something interesting to say, okay?
It's always a pleasure talking to you, Matthew. Thank you.